You know that feeling when you open the laptop, you know exactly what you need to do, but then you just don't do it? You open Instagram, you tell yourself you start 1 hour later, but then that hour seldom comes. And it happens to everyone. It happens to every client we start working with. For instance, Mike. Mike runs an SEO agency. The guy is crazy smart. He's been 5 years at it, and he's been consistently making between 10 and 20K a month. He realized that he needed to break through, so he started a side project. That was about a year in the making. AI base, all that stuff. He had everything validated, developer was nearly done. He just needed to green light it. And he did what you expect him to do. He opened his laptop, he saw the email, and he closed the laptop. And he started watching YouTube again. He was afraid of launching. That is when we started working together. What's even funnier is that his competitor, someone who used to be mentored by Mike, had apparently just crossed 40 or 50K a month. He told me, dude, every time I make a promise to myself of something that I know is going to help me, I just don't do it. I actually don't do it. And what's insane about this story is that he's not unique. I used to be this way. And the biggest billionaires used to be this way too. Bradley Jacobs, for instance, $5 billion companies, described the exact same feeling before his biggest deals. Ray Dalio, the world's largest hedge fund, built his entire organization around defeating this feeling. And Steve Jobs, who built the most valuable company on earth, spent 20 years developing a daily practice specifically to escape this thing. So the difference between them and Mike is not intelligence, it's not discipline, it's not work ethic. It's that they understood something most founders never figured out, which is why they fail. That the brain is actively trapping them in an old version of themselves, and they need to learn how to break through. I call this the current self trap. And most founders never escape it. Most founders never even see the cage. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. Your brain spent 40,000 years evolving to keep you alive but not changing back in the savannah. And now you're asking it to restructure its identity at every business level fast. Your brain is not thrilled about it. And that's why you're stuck. Here's what happens in Mike's brain and everybody's brain when this is going on. Every time you open your laptop to do something that you know is gonna move you forward, then suddenly something pops up in your head that tells you that you probably need to wait. You probably need to start a little bit more research, or the edits need a little pass, or maybe you need to finish another project first. And none of that is true. You're just scared of launching, but all of it felt true. Mike spent 5 years building identity of being an operator, and he was making good money, don't get me wrong, let's say 15K a month on average. But he wasn't letting go of that identity as he needed to in order to move to 30K, 50K, and beyond. He consciously wanted to move up, but his subconscious model of who he was did not recognize that scale as safe. So he was manufacturing reasons to wait. And the science underneath it is fascinating. Your identity, who you think you are, is physically stored obviously in the brain. Neuroimaging research shows one thing very clearly. The more central a belief is to who you think you are, the harder your brain fights to keep it unchanged. And that is not weakness, that's literally architecture. Your brain treats your core identity as a load-bearing wall. If you touch it, it thinks it's going to collapse. So new information that threatens your sense of who you are, well, gets suppressed. Because from an evolutionary perspective, that's not relevant. That's why you can have the perfect strategy, the perfect decisions to make, but you won't make it if that goes against your self-concept. Even if you know that update to your identity, launching that campaign, hiring that person, moving to a new business, leaving your job, whatever that is, even if you know that exactly what you need to do, but you subconsciously don't believe that's for you, you won't do it. You will default to the old version of yourself. And in business, there's 4 transitions that I have mapped out over these past 8 years now working with entrepreneurs. And I believe every founder hits them in sequence. And you're stuck at one of these right now. First, you go from worker to manager. You know you're the best at what you do, and your clients know it. And they send you referrals, and they keep you in business. But at some point, you need to stop working on the product and start selling it. The craftsman identity, the person that thinks that you can do the product better than anyone else and then clients will just show up at your door, needs to die. To make room for the operator you need to become in marketing that. That's the first transformation, from worker craftsman to marketer. And then you need to transition from marketer to leader. You learn to market, you learn to sell, you're the rainmaker. Now you need to build a team that outsells you. And I've watched founders hire closers, setters, and everything just to take the deals back because of quality control. Of course, they block the next stage of the business. Then at some point, you need to move from leader to architect. Architect is when you have a team, but then you stop managing them. then you stop creating layers that manage the team for you. And eventually you graduate. You stop running the machine. You get people that actually run the machine for you so that you don't need to do anything else, just collect checks. There's always something you know you need to do that you are not doing. It won't be solved by you trying harder at it. It will be solved by rewiring your self-image, literally changing who you think you are, your thoughts, your beliefs, your behaviors from the inside out. That's what happened with Mike. Mike literally had this idea of a hands-on operator, the guy who built, delivers, control quality, that literally he was very good at that SEO thing. But the next project forced him to learn and actually upkeep a bunch of other skills, AI related, that he didn't feel were for him. So he was delaying that decision. He found things to review, reasons to delay, because the old version of himself was keeping him track. Your company will not outgrow your self-concept, but the inverse is actually true. The moment your self-concept expands, the moment you understand that entrepreneurship is the way to self-evolve faster, your business will explode immediately. And I've read a lot of biographies, of course. You can see they talk about this. Like take, for instance, Brad Jacobs, right? $5 billion companies, XPO, GXO, RXO, like a bunch of them. He mentions hitting this wall. He didn't hire a consultant though. He didn't read a book. He literally went to expert. He worked with the founders of cognitive behavioral therapy twice a week. In his words, rearrange his brain. And he says it was the most important thing he ever did. It wasn't about market intelligence, hard work time. It was rearranging his own brain to think clearly and transition to the next step. Now, Ray Dalio looked at the problem differently. He realized that there was a structural solution to it, that any founder, no matter how self-aware, will protect existing identity unless the environment forced an update. That is what he did with Bridgewater. He forced a continuous update. He recorded meetings. He had radical transparency, idea meritocracy. He literally rebuilt his organization to make sure his own ego will not curtail its growth. And he called the enemy the ego barrier, the thing that makes you resist changing beliefs precisely because they're not yours. And he didn't try to defeat it through willpower. He built a machine that nudged the whole company in the right direction. And then you have Steve Jobs, who had this Zen practice that everybody thought he was about calmness and balance and equilibrium and just being nicer. No, Jobs meditated for years, not for peace of mind, but for finding the calm in the middle of the storm so he could see what he couldn't see before. That was the key. It was about seeing what was previously unseeable. There's this study by the Max Planck Institute that showed that consistent execution literally creates structural changes in your brain. That's why Steve Jobs meditated so hard. They both rebuilt their identity in 3 different methods. 3 different person in 3 different markets. Jacobs through therapy, Dalio through systems within his business, and Jobs through meditation and mindfulness. But none of them stayed stuck. They all avoided the current self trap because they understood that the hard part of business is not building the company. It's literally becoming the person the next stage requires you to be. That's what I told Mike. Mike knew what he needed to do. Send the fucking project. He had everything in line. We had to rewire the identity from the inside out. So he finished the project, launch it, and actually break through. The solution was actually internal, as it always is. You have to build the version of you that is ready to scale the next level of your business. We built a diagnostic tool that you can take in 3 minutes that is going to show you exactly what friction is keeping you stuck. There's no pitch attached to it. Go through it below and you will find the answer you seek about why you are not as far ahead as you thought you could be. And in the meantime, subscribe and see you in the next video.